Hello, all. Welcome to the 2023 edition of Tacton's Top Strategic Business Trends in Manufacturing. We're excited to share some insights on what is top of mind for manufacturers in 2023 as they plan to face an uncertain economy, working with post-COVID challenges and supply chain disruptions. My name is Sriram Ramadurai. I'm the Vice President of Product Marketing at Tacton Systems. For those of you who are new to Tacton, Tacton is a 25-year-old company, a global software company headquartered in Sweden and Chicago. Our primary focus is on helping manufacturers grow by simplifying their selling experience and helping them reimagine their product and service offerings to their customer base. Also, our primary method of achieving this growth for manufacturers is offering them products, SaaS products around configuration pricing and quoting, also known as CPQ. And we are proud to be recognized as a leader in the 2022 Gartner Magic Quadrant for CPQ application suites. The agenda for today is pretty short. There are a couple of topics that we're going to cover. I'm going to be talking about the 2023 manufacturing trends, how we collected the data, and I'll be presenting that information, followed by some Q&A with Capgemini experts, Christopher Bodell and Benny Karlsson, and I'll be introducing them further down in the conversation here. So let's jump into the trend analysis. So we surveyed about 200 respondents from global manufacturing companies. 74% of them were at or above the managerial level for this survey. And we focused on three focus areas. The first one being digital transformation, second one on their 2023 priorities, and the final one on what's top of mind with respect to sustainability initiatives, et cetera. And then we also did some research around what the industry analysts and experts are saying around what's the pressing needs for manufacturers in 2023. Before I jump into the data itself, I want to share with you a couple of things. The first is the key observations that we found from this research, and then I want to do a quick look back at what the 2022 research with respect to manufacturing trends we had. So the key observations, the first one that we found from this research was digital transformation is still very much central to manufacturers. It's not that digital transformation has not been taking place for some time. It's just that there is a more holistic approach, a system-wide approach to how manufacturing companies are looking at it. It's not just IT focused or systems focused or operational technology focused or data strategy, et cetera. Long-term supply chain adjustments are becoming very essential now. I'm sure many of you have been impacted in your daily work environments. And then sustainability preparedness has become top of mind for manufacturing companies. It was always been a topic that's been around, but customers and manufacturers are thinking around how they're going to be prepared to meet the regulatory requirements, et cetera, as they plan for 2023 and beyond. Like I said, talking about the look back on the 2022 trends, there are 3 or 4 areas that stood out for us in our research in 2022. The first one being the power of experience. And when we talk about power of experience, we're talking about how manufacturing companies are helping their customers having a holistic customer experience. And this is being driven by the new digital native generation of B2B buyers demanding a B2C customer experience. And then they were also focused on managing disruption-proof operations, right? Supply chain was always a big challenge. Added to that, there's been a workforce focus that's been with respect to talent retention, talent attrition, managing those type of disruptions. And then they were also focused on the evolving value chains, like where do they see themselves in the whole value chain and how they can modify that in terms of, as an example, looking at the go-to-market models, how to improve their revenue models. Equipment as a service is an example that comes to mind that has been something that they've been looking at evaluating in 2022 and beyond. And finally, sustainability, we talked about a little bit before. It's been the top of mind item, more prevalent in Europe there than in North America, but it's definitely starting to gain a lot more steam in the North American market as well. So having said that, let's jump into some of the survey results here. So, like I said before, we focused on 3 areas. I'm going to start with digital transformation. So we asked many questions here. We're sharing some key data points. So the first question is, how important is digital transformation to achieving your business goals in the coming year? 32% consider it to be extremely important, and overall, as you can see, 74% of them consider it to be very or extremely important to achieving their business goals. Then we asked them, do you believe your digital transformation efforts have given you a competitive advantage? It's an interesting statistic here. 58% feel that they're pretty much at par with a competitive advantage, is probably because majority of them are in some form of digital transformation. 24% believe they're ahead, and 13% believe they're still behind or lagging. Then what areas are your company's digital transformation initiatives focused on? This was again an interesting statistic that we found is 67% are prioritizing sales as the #1 area with respect to the transformation initiative. 63% focused on supply chain, and 56% selected product as the third category. Then how have uncertain economic times impacted your digital transformation efforts? 32% have accelerated their efforts, especially with the COVID changes, post-COVID transformations, and 44% are no change or steady, which is understandable. Many of them are continuing with their initiatives which they started off over the last few years. Then when you look at the 2023 priorities, we asked manufacturers when they anticipate the next year's recession. I'm sure in your internal conversations you are getting different responses. Our respondents came back with almost half of them saying they've already begun. The recession has already begun. 12% feel it's in Q1 of 2023, and 21% feel it's going to be in the second half or Q2, sorry. And then which key investment initiatives do you consider most important during this current economic uncertainty? This was a whopping 64% saying the focus is going to be on supply chain optimization. 45% mentioned digitalization as a key area, as a second area to focus on, and 40% focused on digital direct sales as most important. And which strategic areas do you consider most important to remain competitive and bolster growth in the coming year in 2023? 59% are focused on reducing costs, which is understandable given the uncertainty in the economy. So if you think about the last slide where we talked about digital transformation, they said they wanted to focus on sales in terms of growing. It makes sense. You want to increase your sales and you want to reduce your costs, especially in an uncertain environment. 49% are focused on increasing quality, and 48% are focused on increasing revenue. Where do you see the future of manufacturing sales going? 47% they believe it's going to be direct sales, and 35% through distribution, and 16% through partners. And lastly, from a data standpoint, let's look at sustainability. How important are sustainability initiatives for you this year? 28% considered to be extremely important, and 35% very important. So it's definitely top of mind for manufacturing companies. How have requests to provide information about the environmental impact of your products changed in the past year? This is where they have to start sharing information with their customer base. They're saying 10% has gone significantly up, 27% somewhat up, and 25% slightly up. Overall, it's going up, basically. What aspects of sustainability are your customers most interested in? 49% say energy conservation is on top of the list. 42% also include waste management. 39% are responding with an environmentally sourced as the third option. And then with respect to providing planning to estimate the environmental impact of the products that they manufacture, 52% are interestingly saying they're already collecting this type of information and already sharing it with their customers. 17% say yes, but they don't know how. This is one area which I think we will do further research on as we continue into the next year as to what type of data they share, etc. So that's the data portion of it. We also looked at the analysis from industry experts, talked to a few of the experts, etc. And let's see what they said were the most pressing items with respect to the three focus areas we looked at. So first one that came up on the list was the workforce focus. So manufacturing companies are definitely continuing to focus on talent retention in 2023, and not just talent retention aspect of it. There is the implementing of workforce efficiency tools, whether it's through new technologies like AI or having cobots and things like that added into the manufacturing work floor. Right? And then secondly, there is an integrated approach to transformation. I think I mentioned at the top of the session that there's a system-wide approach to transformation, and also the decision making is starting to be managed by more of the functional stakeholders. It's not just a CIO or digital officer driven decision making with respect to the transformation that's taking place. Smart factories is always something that's been going on for a few years. I just put it as a last of the list. It's not that it's not a trend that's taking place. It's definitely continuing. With respect to sustainability, there is a lot more questions being asked around something known as a digital product passport, where the customers of manufacturing companies are wanting to know where the product is sourced from, where is it going to go, and it's all tied to the whole concept of having a circular economy. And to look at these type of requests, manufacturing companies are starting to look at life cycle assessment systems to help them capture some of these data and implement this. So this is another trend that's catching up. And lastly, supply chain realignment is definitely a key trend that manufacturing companies are planning around. They are looking at increased outsourcing to multiple markets. It's more of a China plus one strategy, an India plus one strategy, etc. And they're using technology to help manage these disruptions. And many of you are very much aware of the inflation aspect of all the pricing and everything going up. And so there's a cost focus also aligned with the supply chain focus here. So we've looked at all this. Now let's go to how this has impacted the whole trend and focus for 2023 for manufacturing companies. Overall, the macro areas are pretty much the same of power of experience, managing disruption-proof or having disruption-proof operations, and looking at the value chains. But what's happening, or what we see in 2023 is there is a more deep dive or focus in supply chain realignment for manufacturing companies. There's a focus on the workforce aspect of it, from talent retention and preventing attrition, and managing those efficiency tools that we talked about. There's also, from a customer experience standpoint, there's a holistic approach to the transformation, a more integrated approach as opposed to doing it in silos. Right. And then sustainability, like you mentioned, it's not just something that we want to, the customers want to, they basically want to have this developed and be prepared for it as more regulatory requirements are coming into play. So I think I've shared quite a bit of information here. Now I'd like to bring in our experts from Capgemini, Christopher Bodell and Benny Karlsson here, and we can see if they agree with some of these results. Welcome, Benny and Christopher. Let me just make sure that I can have you on the screen here. Okay, so can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and we can see you too, SR.
Great. All right. Yeah. So Benny and Christopher are from Capgemini Invent. Capgemini is a multinational informational technology services and consulting company. It's headquartered in Paris, France. Their Invent arm combines strategy, technology, data science, creative design, and engineering expertise to help their clients' business transformation. Christer Bodell is a director with Capgemini Invent, focusing on advanced analytics and artificial intelligence targeted towards automotive and manufacturing. He has, since the mid-'80s, a lot of experience working with different customers in different industries, but all related to analytics and artificial intelligence solutions to turn data into actionable insights. And Benny Karlsson is a vice president at Capgemini Invent, focusing on the intelligent industry segment. He's responsible for advisory and transformation services and capabilities related to intelligence services, engineering, supply chain operations, and industrial analytics in Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. So welcome again, Benny and Christer. Thanks for taking the time to do this, and pretty excited to have you on the call to share, get some of your insights. Before we, jump into the Q&A section of it, it'd be great if each of you can provide a short focus on what are your current initiatives, what are you currently focusing on?
Yeah, so after all of this work that we've done, what the focus is clearly now on just getting business value and business use out of these things. We've had a lot of development going on, and there's a lot of accelerating development happening. But we want to make sure that people in the end are actually using this to do what they're supposed to do, and much related to the stuff you talked about, SR, to make sure that things actually happen in the business to create value.
Okay, Benny.
Yeah, to be a little bit boring, I would follow Christer a little bit, but I think it's a little bit very much on selling and enabling value to our customers. I think it's a focus on, as you did in the presentation, on intelligent engineering, operations and services. And also, as you highlighted, sustainability is becoming more and more of a topic for us. And we are really integrating it into everything we do with our customers, even into our operations at Capgemini.
Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you for that. So I'm going to start off with Benny and look at some of the results that we just showed our audience here. So 74% of our respondents consider digital transformation as extremely or very important in 2023. We also saw from our results that there is continued focus on digital transformation, supply chain realignment, and sustainability planning. Can you share some of your inputs if you're seeing the same from your research and your client conversations?
Yeah, we actually did a similar survey, I think mid-22, where we asked 100 plus CXO across the globe. And I think most of them, or the majority at least, they saw a continued appetite for digital transformation. I think they expected that they would spend more money in 23 than in 22 on digital transformation. However, in the light, of course, of the current financial climate, we now see a little bit more cautious approach to investments in some companies. Some segments still see a very strong demand, but others are starting to see a dip. And I think on top of this, of course, we have this kind of supply and inflation challenge, which for many still is a very much of an urgent problem.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you think that the companies are willing to continue their investment given this climate?
I sure hope so, or I sure think so as well. I think they have learned from past crises that putting investment completely to a halt will kind of cause too much damage on the kind of competitive side. So I think it will be a little bit harder to get transformation started on kind of vague value statements. I think the trick will really be to find concrete use cases able to kind of improve process performance or customer values. And I think this goes very much hand in hand with what I and Christer are talking about, that we kind of always focus on the kind of value and having a value-driven approach, meaning that investment should really be guided by what kind of value can we give to customers, shareholders, society, or employees. And I think this also helps in kind of implementing a change of any kind, because a successful implementation really need to kind of capture the attention of the leaders and the employees. And if you have a clear kind of value statement for why you're doing something, it's much easier to get them on board.
That's very interesting you say that. Like from a personal standpoint, I've been with Tacton for a year now, and one of the core tenets at Tacton is to approach every one of our customer relationship with a value assessment approach. We actually implement in our whole process of making sure that we can provide some hard metrics, and it's part of our process with customers to look at the value that they will generate before they go through a transformation project, right? So how about supply chain? What's your view on the supply chain realignment? What's happening there?
There's a lot of things happening in supply chain at the moment. I think the realignment started a little bit before the current crisis to kind of increase supply resilience. We saw companies starting to regionalize the supply chains to a certain extent. And I think a shrinking total cost arbitrage, I think, made it a little bit more feasible to start this journey. And a lot of companies started already then. But then, of course, with the war in Ukraine and the kind of increased geopolitical risks, I think this movement has increased even more. But on the other hand, now we are seeing big inflation in Europe and in US, which of course may create a kind of counterforce to this movement. So let's see what happens. But if I would make a bet, I think the regionalization will continue.
Okay. And lastly, I'd like your thoughts on sustainability as a it's everybody talks about it. What's your experience with that?
I think sustainability, I think everyone has been talking about it for a very long time. But what we're seeing now, at least at many of the companies that we are working with, is that they are starting to take actions. They are starting to go beyond the kind of simple things that they have been working with for many years into looking at the kind of complete life cycle or the complete value chain in a sense. And I think it is becoming a more and more important topic. I think regulation is pushing in this area, but I also think that the new kind of ambitious emission system launched by EU, I think this will also create additional pressure, and I think it will also lead that it's much easier to motivate sustainability investment from a kind of pure financial standpoint. And as I said, I think many companies have already done great process, but I think it needs to accelerate, and I'm pretty sure it will. And we also see, as you said earlier on, around the kind of LCA systems, that more and more customers now, I think both from a kind of B2C perspective and a B2B, are starting to kind of make requirements on their kind of suppliers. And so the requirements are not only coming from the governments these days.
Good. How about you, Christer? Do you have any thoughts to share if manufacturers are still siloed in their initiatives or starting to take a more holistic approach?
Well, I think on the investment side, I think just like Benny said, to do all those things that requires digitalization, and of course AI in itself is it's a prerequisite to do those things. And I'm thinking, as far as the siloed approach goes, I think. Yeah, it used to be siloed in sales, marketing, quality, whatever else. Right now, people are investing in these platforms to get all the data available to do much more holistic things. So there's this platform, be it cloud usually, and then the data that's all ingested in this, and then the tools, and then the people on top of that and everything else, so that you should be able to do a lot of things. What I'm seeing, and this is my view, I'm seeing it's sort of, it's funny if you get siloed sort of the other way, that it's siloed in a very technical platform people, it's siloed then around getting all the data in order, then it's siloed around the tools, siloed around the knowledge, and then it reaches the end user sort of in a way that maybe previously you could take a smaller initiative and at least get that going. So I think we have a way to go now to integrate all these big investments that we're doing. So yes, holistic approach from trying to really get together, organizational changes that is meant to push those decisions out. So yes, there are a lot of initiatives. I think we have a way to go though to get the value out that we've been talking about already.
Yeah, and now a lot of these initiatives also takes a good capability to handle the change management in the organizations and being set up for it and set the right expectations. So. Thank you.
To touch on that, just I think the key is to go from sort of we've done with digitalization a lot of efficiency wins. We've gotten better at doing what we do in a much more efficient way. Now it's about effectiveness. How can you do the right things? How can you do totally different things and do things in a totally new way? It's like Netflix, they started to use technology to stream the data rather than to send DVDs. But the advantage they got was that, this wealth of data that made it possible for them to understand what's really going on and to come with offers and segmentations. And that's, I think, what the manufacturers need to get into, is that way of getting, effectiveness out of all this.
Okay, great. So I think this is more for, I'll start with shift to Benny here. One area from our research is the shift in manufacturers moving towards newer revenue models that I talked about. It's continuing to happen as the equipment as a service. It'd be interesting for our audience to know if manufacturers have the necessary digital tools to manage this new revenue model and subscription-based selling.
This is a really interesting area, and as you say, it's a great trend. And I think the move towards intelligent services with connected products as one of the key enablers, I think it's here to stay. And I think we see growing opportunities with our clients, and for many, it's more of a kind of a journey, I would say, towards equipment as a service rather than a kind of dramatic or sudden shift. But as you understand, equipment as a service, it implies that you sell a subscription service, meaning that the product is available for use whenever the kind of client needs it. And this is, of course, a little bit different from the kind of traditional dual business model that clients are having today, where they first kind of in a transaction sell the product and thereafter sell spare parts and kind of services toward that product. So it's kind of integrating all those three into one services. So it's an interesting area. But I think also in other areas, I think in segments where autonomous, I think could be an option. Companies are even considering output-based kind of service. That meaning kind of having the equipment or the machines kind of delivering the output that the client is in the past used to buy them for. So I think this is also a trend that we really see. But in many companies, this is a journey. So I would say the focus right now for many is still around kind of uptime services, sustainability services, or kind of productivity services, which is kind of one leap towards kind of as a service kind of models, I would say.
I agree with you. One thing that I would ask is that with respect to maturity of this model becoming more prevalent, is there a lot more customers asking you around this, around subscription selling, taking equipment as service, or is this still in the nascent stages?
No, I think the trend is growing bigger and bigger, and I think it's a little bit. It's not like this is a new thing around in the industry. I think companies have been talking about these kind of services for at least 15 years, I would say. But I think it's a little bit like in the early days of internet, that in the days it was good ideas. Today, I think the technology is there, so it's actually much more feasible and possible to implement and provide these kind of services to customers than maybe it was 10 years back. So I think it's a little bit that the maturity of the technology, etc., has caught up with the idea of providing these services.
Gotcha. Great. Well, now I'll bring Christer into the conversation here. So, you saw me talk about how our respondents, about half of them think they're in a recessionary environment and or about to get into one. What do you think when you talk to clients in manufacturing? What are you hearing from them? This topic.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think we've talked about this recession for a while now. I mean, the big hit was about a year ago, right? When things were being disrupted and we realized we're going to hit something. So I think the word caution is one that I'd use. People are looking, around over the shoulder and what the others are doing. And if there's going to be a wall up there, they want to make sure that they don't hit it sort of full speed. So we don't see any. I mean, there are a lot of things that seem still to be going well, but I think people are going to be cautious for a while until we can see a bit further ahead. Basically, that's it. But I think there's another aspect in the area of analytics and AI where I think these investments that have been done, maybe from basically almost also fear of missing out, and you just have to be there because you just need to stay up. And the lack of what we've already touched on a couple of times, getting real business value out of this. And we got to realize that most of these in the manufacturing companies, the C-level is not the generation that grew up with analytics and AI. They didn't study that data, computer science and machine learning in school. They didn't work with it for 5-10 years. So it's a bit foreign, and we got to make this transition. So I think there's a hesitation on sort of, okay, until we see more results, we may cut back too. So there are two sort of drivers, I think, that could sort of inhibit this development. And that's why I think it's so important that we focus on getting real value out so that we get moving in this direction, because we have to take those steps based on all the things that Benny just talked about. All these areas need that kind of help.
Okay. No, that's very interesting view of that. Thank you. So, if I move to the next topic around, the strategic investments that companies are focusing on, we see supply chain optimization, digitalization, these stand out, and also digital direct sales, which is right behind it. What are your clients thinking about it and in terms of investing in it, and why? It's an open question, Benny or Krista, whoever wants to go on first.
Yeah, I think both me and Krista are starting to sound like a little bit like a broken record now, kind of continuing to come back to value, or at least zooming in on a kind of a process pain point or an opportunity. Because I think in these days, with a little bit more caution, as it's critical to kind of be able to kind of say, what are we fixing, or what revenue do we think we can achieve with this, etc., etc. So I think value is really, really king. And I think that is something both me and Krista are kind of helping our clients with to kind of articulate in a good way in many cases. So I think it's an important area for us.
But I would like to, sorry to jump in here, but I would like to understand, are there any specific hot areas, right? This one is from our research saying supply chain is the top thing and digitalization is standing out. Are there any specific hot areas that you're seeing from your conversations?
Yeah, for sure. There are many areas of investment. And now, of course, I'm speaking a little bit out of my focus from which I have at Capgemini. But I see one area is digital continuity regarding kind of product information. This is one way of kind of getting this information shared in a kind of single social truth mode across the kind of value chain, or at least between engineering and manufacturing is a good start. But I think it's a really good way of enabling kind of concurrent processes, which in turn can kind of reduce time to market, reduce quality issues, improve engineering efficiency, etc., etc. So this is a really foundational kind of investment that many companies do today, and we are able to kind of to do it while delivering value. But of course, for those who are still in a kind of high growth or even in a consolidation mode, if you have been on a kind of acquisition journey for some years, I think there is opportunities and a willingness to invest to achieve kind of speed to order fulfillment or reduce kind of product cost by looking into modular and more configurable products, which then of course also would kind of enable a CPQ to where it makes sense. And supply chain, I think we have spoken around that, but I think we see investments across the board to improve kind of planning and demand forecasting kind of topics, but also optimization, kind of modeling the supply chain to get kind of support and understanding on, okay, when this happens, what should we do next, etc. But of course, there's also non-digital investments, as we said, the kind of regionalization of the supply chain, but there's also, of course, kind of optimization of this kind of supply networks in general. Then, of course, also, as I spoke, sustainability. This is a really hot area for us. I think the ambitions of the companies are rising, and the requirements of the customers and the governments are also rising. So in combination, there is a lot of happening.
Okay.
I'd like to just tag on, Benny, there too. I mean, there are a lot of areas they need to invest in. I think one that I feel is important is to invest more in data literacy and statistics and probability theory and how to drive and build analytics use cases and use cases for AI. Because we got to realize this is different from what we've been doing for 50 years. Is like we were talking about before, efficiency, doing transactional things better and faster. Now we got to get into a different way of working where it's not about putting requirements to IT provide something that will work for us. We have to drive that. With we, I mean the business, has to drive those sort of things. So we need to understand more about a new area, and I'd like to see investing there to make the business more ready for this.
When you say that, that kind of leads me into my next question, right? For having those type of skills and things, you need the right type of talent in the organization. And manufacturing companies, like we looked at, one of the things that they are focusing on is talent retention and making sure they have the right type of workforce to manage all these future trends and requirements. So, what thoughts do you have around that in terms of talent retention, as you see from an AI perspective and such?
Well, I can go first. I think, and I'll give my angle at it. And it's what we see is now there's companies have invested in this kind of talent, coming out of school and, becoming a sort of a Silicon Valley type of environment. And what they're finding is that it's just too expensive because we don't, in manufacturing, really know how to utilize this yet. For all the reasons that we've talked about now for a long time, it's just not really mature around how to work with this sort of new way of thinking. So what we see, and one initiative we're involved in is actually quite interesting, where companies realize they need to upskill and reskill, the staff that they have, because there's so much domain knowledge in the companies that they need to really capitalize on, but they also need other skills. So we're actually in an investment project where we're looking at how can we understand which people would be sort of reasonable to take on a new kind of job position or new kind of role, and what is the skills gap, and with that skills gap, how do they best complement that? So we're actually using digitalization and AI to define these things and to find, in the jungle of different roles and competences and all the sort of trainings that are available out there now with everything that's available, what is the best match to really develop and move your staff forward? So using AI to enable staff so that they can continue on this AI and analytics journey, So it's either a good circle or a vicious circle, and you got to get on that good circle. So we're going to see it in a lot of places, I think.
Okay. How about you, Benny? Any thought with respect to the war for talent? Do you think it's there in your conversations with the customers, or what do you think?
I think there is a war for talent for sure, and I think I agree with Christer and what he's saying on the talent side. And I think all the kind of digital investments I've been speaking about before. I think people, at the end of the day, I think you need to get your people upskilled and ready to kind of work in new kind of ways, even though in some areas I think some things are getting a little bit more simpler with kind of low-code technologies or kind of black box technologies to a certain extent, meaning that kind of people who don't have a statistical knowledge maybe can do simpler AI kind of stuff, and people who are not our system developers can create kind of simpler workflows in a good way. So there's technology enabling, but that doesn't kind of reduce the need for people to understand what you can do with digital technology, which is a little bit different in a sense. And I think that mindset is what's really needed out there, out in the organization around the processes to understand, okay, how can we use digital technologies to really improve the way we are working? And I think this is a shift, and it will take time, I think. And many companies, I think, to be successful, I think you need to rethink to a certain extent the kind of complete employee value proposition to a certain extent. I think salary is important, and we have seen kind of significant raises for certain competencies. I think the war factor that we were talking about a little bit in the beginning. But I think much more than salary is important for the employees, of course. And I think it's really a little bit individual. For some, I would say purpose is really important, having an impact around sustainability. So I think that also goes hand in hand with kind of saving the planet. The employees in your companies also want to save the planet, and it makes them feel good and makes them stay with the company at the same time. But for others, I think working with kind of leading edge stuff, I think that could even be the thing that they want to work. So I think you really need to think about almost kind of a modular kind of employee experience to a certain extent to make sure that you're able to kind of to attract the right people. But then, of course, culture and the modern leadership is also important, because I think the people coming out of school these days are a little bit different than the guys coming out when Christer or even I got out from school.
Yeah. Okay. And so one other area that I wanted to touch upon for today was around the sustainability planning. I know we've talked about it in different sections here, but it is something that's top of mind for manufacturers. I want to say, from my personal experience talking to customers and being in manufacturing, it was not as prevalent in North America. It was a lot more prevalent than in Europe, but now it's starting to gain a lot of speed. So do you know if this is being driven by manufacturers having to provide data, environmental data, to their customer base, or what's your thought around that?
I think
Sure, maybe you want to take this. Yeah,
I can pitch in from my angle. I think this is a topic now, and it's clearly connected to the data. And I think it starts with just getting getting the data in place for monitoring and reporting. Because if you visualize and you gain insights, then you start to take actions, right? And I think you need to do it like Benny and you were talking about before. It's regulatory, but it's also customer and demand driven. Some big manufacturing investments being done for fossil-free steel and all sorts of things, right? So I think number one is you just got to measure your footprint. But then it goes to how can you, in order to provide sustainable operations, sustainable products and services, sustainable IT, to use that data and use real sophisticated optimization techniques, high compute things to really help and assist in this. So analytics also here comes in as a big piece in order to drive your environmental agenda, I think. I don't know, Benny, what your thoughts are.
No, I think data analytics around sustainability is big for sure. I think across the value chain, depending on how you look at it, I think today you can design things which you couldn't design yesterday using a kind of cool new kind of tools to design things with less material and less weight, as an example. The data part, and yet companies are kind of using the kind of framework around getting a good understanding across scope 1 to 3. I think it's a really good start, because depending on which kind of industry you are, the impact will vary quite heavily. But for equipment manufacturers, I think in many cases, I think the largest impact will be around scope 3 downstream, meaning in your customer operations. So in many cases, if you want to kind of reduce your impact on the environment, you need to go back to the kind of either to the product development and look at how can I make my product more energy efficient when it's being used at the kind of customer site, or even look at services, as we discussed before a little bit on, okay, how can I help my customers by using the data that the equipment kind of pushes out to be more sustainable in their operations. But of course, where the biggest scope is, it varies a little bit, but it's a good start, I think, using that framework.
Oh, excellent. I think those are really wonderful insights. I know I'd like to have another hour-long conversation with you, but that's all we have for today that we want to share with our audience. Hopefully they found these insights useful as they plan for the future in 2023 and beyond. I just want to close out by sharing that if you want to get more information around the state of digital manufacturing, the survey results and report, this will be sent to you for those who have registered for this session and have been attending, and you can get more insights around what's happening in manufacturing for 2023. So thank you very much for attending. And again, Benny and Christer, great insights. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.